everybody, and welcome to the third part in the introduction to scripting for my ROBLOX scripting series, scripting in Roblox. So today in this episode I want to cover strings. Now I've used strings in both of the previous, well, I haven't used them in both, but I've mentioned strings in both of the previous episodes. And I've sort of explained that strings are a collection of characters. And a character is like a letter or number or something that we can display as text on a screen. Now, I'm going to show you guys this in a bit more detail, and this episode will probably be closer to 20 minutes, as have been some of the other, well, not some, there's only been two, as was the other one. So let's go ahead and insert a script into server script service. Again, we are presented with print and then the string hello world wrapped in single quotation marks. We're going to remove this line. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is cover what a character is, because a character is really the building block of strings. Strings can't exist without characters. Everything about a string is about characters. Now, when I say characters, as I've said before, I don't mean Mickey Mouse. I don't mean Phineas and Ferb. I mean a single piece of text. If you look down at your keyboard, you can see Q, W, E, R, T, Y, or perhaps you have a different version of a keyboard or layout, such as the Dvorak. Then you probably are smart enough to understand this concept already, so I'm not really going to delve into that. But for most of us, we have QWERTY style keyboards. You see the QWERTY, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Above that, you see an exclamation mark, an @ symbol, pound sign. Yes, pound sign, not a hashtag. It's only a hashtag if used hashtagging. A dollar symbol, and the percent symbol. All of these are technically what we call characters. Almost everything that you can type is a character. A character is a single piece of text that can be viewed in a computer monitor. Now, that means that a string is a string of characters together. And string is not honestly the best word for this. However, using the term string, and to help this make more sense when I say string, so that you don't just think a flimsy piece of, well, yarn or something, counts as a string, I'm going to kind of elaborate on this. A string in computer programming or computer scripting terms means, as I've said many times before in this episode already, a list of characters. They're in a string though, because as you'll soon find out, the string can kind of be manipulated just by a single line. Everything can change. Much like a string, you can flick your wrist and the orientation of the string can change. And say that your string is the beginning of a bracelet. Say you're making a bracelet or a necklace. If you're doing this and you're making a string or bracelet, and then you have beads along the string. And if you haven't connected the two ends of the string together to make a circle, and you flick, then your beads are going to go flying off of it. You're going to lose all of your progress. Now, strings aren't exactly the same way, in which a small mistake can make you lose all of your progress. While that is true, a string isn't nearly as difficult to create as a bracelet. However, we're going to use this metaphor to continue this idea and get this into your head easier. Now, a string being used for a bracelet can have different types of beads, but they're all a single bead, and you can't have a bracelet without a bead. Okay, so that's why I'm using this metaphor, this visualizer. Now visualize that you just put a single bead on. The bracelet is now different. Much like a string, if you put a single character onto a string, it is now different. If you take one off, it is now different, and a string is different. Now, a thing about strings in in computers rather than in the world of making bracelets. You can take characters out from the middle and not take off the characters on the ends. In real life, typically, unless you have really fancy beads, you have to take all of the beads off to take even one off, or at least all of the ones towards a desired end. But with strings, you can literally just pull characters out. And the characters to the right of it, because strings, much like how we read, are sort of assembled in a left to right pattern. Left is the first character, right is the last. Much of how we read. In fact, they were set up to be as we read. You can pull things out, as I was saying. You can pull things out of the middle of a string, and the ones to the right of those characters will just sort of slide their way down the bracelet, as if you pulled the ones off and then you tilted it up, and you just slid those ones down. Now, this visualizer of a bracelet isn't perfect, and neither is the term string. I don't actually know the reason we call them strings. However, because they are called strings, I am going to try to teach them as if they were material strings, so that it can better sit in your head, and when you're scripting, you can visualize it, and then hopefully that makes things easier for you. Now, if we continue our tutorial with actual work and not just me talking my mouth off, we will be able to learn a little bit more about strings. So first off, I want to continue our learning of variables. I'd like to set a variable, and this is gigantic text, so we're going to scale it down a bit. Local, we're going to call this my string, equals hello world, just like we do. Hello world is a very simple string, and it's one of the main things that we programmers do when we're trying to show an example. So, hello world, hopefully you like this tutorial. My string equals hello world. Now, say we wanted to put something after hello world. What if we wanted to print something after hello world? Well, we could change our variable, or we could write a whole new string. But what if we didn't want to do that? What if we just needed to change it one time and we didn't want to have to actually change the variable? And what if it was something like maybe we had a user typing something in to our, I don't know, maybe we had a GUI and they were typing something in and then boom, or they chatted it. They chatted something and we wanted to show it to people in a certain way with something before it. Well, to do this we use something called concatenation. Concatenation, which I will spell out over here. Concatenation, I spelled it out in a string, as you can see, because of the quotation marks. Concatenation just means to put two strings together. Con, the beginning of concatenation, this root here that I'm highlighting and about to turn capital, con means together, with. This catenation part, I don't know, but just get it that this means to put two strings together. And in Lua, we do it slightly differently than many other languages. But I'm not going to confuse you by showing you how we do it in other languages, and I'm only going to show you how we do it in Lua. In Lua, if we wanted to combine two strings, and we were going to by using print, we're going to print my string. Notice that's not actually a string right now, it's a variable. However, that variable holds a string as its value. Therefore, the print command doesn't actually, by the time Lua is interpreting and executing this statement, and by the way, a statement is any single line of code that does something. Practically everything you see in scripting or programming is a statement. Now, print my string, this statement will actually get the string, not the variable. It gets the value of the variable. It's a confusing world, but as time goes on, hopefully you'll start to get it. And there are some things that I can't directly teach you, but with enough time and enough effort, you will have that light bulb go off over your head, and you will figure this out. Now, print my string, and then, oops, after my string in Lua, what we do is we put 2 dots. And I want you guys to not see my string as my string and then expect it to print that. Actually look at my string as the Lua compiler would see it, and see it as this, okay? My string holds a value. So we're not printing my string, we're printing the value of the variable named my string. Now, we put 2 dots, not necessarily spaces, we don't need those, but it helps for readability. And as I said, readability is one of the most important things when you're coding. So let's make sure we're readable. So my string, and then we're going to put how are you with a comma and a space, because Lua does not know English. Lua does not know English. Even though the keywords and many of the things you write will be in English, that's only because it was programmed to use those exact sets of characters to do certain things. And the people who developed it wanted it to be readable to people who spoke and read and wrote in English. Lua does not know English. It does not know English grammar. Therefore, if you just put my string and then concatenated how are you, it would literally look like this. And by the way, this is a comment. I'm going to delve into comments. Well, I'll delve into comments right now. A comment, no. No, I'll do comments next time. Just know that this is a comment right now. And basically that means Lua won't do whatever's written in the comment. What that will print out to right now is hello world. Actually, I'll take the quotation marks out because those won't be printed. Hello world, how are you? Notice how there's no space between world and how? That's because Lua doesn't know English. However, if we put a comma into space, now it looks readable to us and correct. So if we do this and we clear our output just so it's a little bit more readable, and then we run this, boom, hello world, how are you? We combined 2 strings together and it printed correctly. I'm going to clear my output again and go back to our script. So now we know about concatenation. And by the way, you can concatenate an infinite number of items. You can even concatenate numbers. So say we wanted to put 1337, elite, awesome number if you're a computer person, 1337. This will now print as so. This will now say, hello world, how are you, 1337, like that. Now, of course, that doesn't make much grammatical sense, but it works. You can also print what we call a Boolean value, which I will be covering here soon. And that is true. If we did that, then this would print as hello world, how are you, true. Okay, now a Boolean just holds a true or false value, but I'm not going to get too far into that. Now, how are you? Okay, so this is one way. Next up, I want to stop printing concatenated things. Well, actually, we're going to keep the concatenated item, but we're now going to start calling functions now on our string. Now, I want to show you guys 2 ways that these functions can work. And the first way is honestly the simpler. However, it can also be slightly more difficult to understand and grasp. However, hopefully I can teach it in a way that it is not. Now, my string, if we put a colon after that, whenever you put a colon in Lua after the name of a variable or an object or something along those lines, I know some of these words aren't going to make sense to everybody, and I apologize. We haven't gotten that far. This is only part 3, and we have a very long way to go before you can know everything in the book. But the basics are the important part. If we put a colon, then that is telling Lua that we want to call what is called a function or a method. And a function or a method is just sort of a way to call a lot of code in a quick, condensed way. And I'm going to get more into those later on as well. There's a lot left to show you, don't worry. However, right now, just get to the point. And I know I'm saying however a lot, but get over it, I guess. Alright, my string. And if we did something like upper, Alright, we did upper to hello world. Remember, this my string is actually hello world like it is up here. Then what this is going to print out, and I'll show you guys a couple of these, but I'm not going to actually run the game for each one, I don't think. But this will actually print out as hello world, how are you? Why? Because upper makes every character in the string you're calling on become uppercase, or every character. Now, characters that can't become uppercase, such as underscores, and by the way, this is wrong, there we go, how are you? Underscores or numbers, those will stay the same. But letters that can be uppercased will be uppercased. How are you? There we go. That is my string upper. Now, the other way you could call this is by using string dot upper my string, and by doing that you're actually just calling it from what is called the string class, and it's sort of the same idea because my string is a string, but doing it this way is sometimes the preferential way, and I'm showing you guys both ways because you may need it someday. Now keep in mind, for every other function I'm going to show you today, you can do this by using string.name of function or method, parenthesis, name of string, or just put a string in there, and then the rest of the parameters or arguments after that. However, you can start off, if you're not going to do it by using my string upper, but instead you go for this version, you have to put the my string as the first parameter or argument, which just means first thing within these parentheses. I'm going to get in parameters and arguments. I'm going to get into that later as well. But you just put your string first, because that is the way Lua was written, that if you didn't want to call it directly on the object, it would do it off of the first parameter. Now keep in mind, the first parameter could technically be concatenated with another string, and that's the time that this would be good. So say we wanted to actually do the string to upper thing and not just my string, but also how are you? Well, that would be a reason to use string to upper like this rather than my string upper, because by doing this we cannot also capitalize how are you. I'm going to return this to the way that I prefer though, which is my string upper. And I'm going to show you that it does in fact print out to this. I'm going to remove that though and press run. Here we go. Hello world, how are you? Hopefully the answer is great. We will now reset again. I'll clear my output once more and we'll come back. Now the exact opposite of upper is, of course, after I type this all in uppercase, lower. And what this will do, as I'm going to show you, is convert it to lowercase. Hello world, how are you? Now we're going to switch back to the lowercase version, but we're actually going to keep the first letter uppercase, just for grammatical reasons. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is what we call substrings. Now, substrings are really just kind of like, let's imagine the bracelet thing again. You have a bracelet, and let's say you have like 20 beads on this bracelet, but you wanted to just get a select 4 of these 20 beads. Well, those beads would be a sub bracelet, sort of. More like a ring, but anyway, just you get the string, and you get a sub part of it, a smaller piece of the grander pie of strings, and you take that out. That is a substring. So if we did this, we do my string sub, which means substring. 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 And now the first parameter, unless you're doing it this way, which would be string.sub, and then the first parameter would be my string or whatever string you want to do. But remember, you can do that. But for this, the first parameter is the number or the index, and I'll get into indexes in just a second, of the first character that you want to get from this substring. Now an index, by the way, an index is the number at which you want to get, like, every character in a string has an index attached to it. And these indexes in Lua, most programming languages, this index starts at 0, but in Lua, it starts at 1. And so the first character, I'm going to label all of these, and I'm going to put their index underneath them here. Whoop. Okay. So let's move this 1 over to here. Okay, I need to move this so that my character shows up. Okay, my caret. So this is the first index. This H has index 1. This L has index 3 because it's the third letter in the sequence. This O has index 5. This L has 4, but I'm not going to show that because otherwise it's going to look like 345. This has 4. This has 2. Even the space has an index. If I delete this 5, it has 6 as its index. This W has 7. The O is 8. R is 9. L is 10. And D is 11. These are indexes based upon the position of the character in the string. That is what an index is. It gives you the position of the character within the string. So in my string sub, the first thing we want, the first parameter is the first index that we want to get our substring at. Now, let's say we're just getting world. Let's count this out. First is 1, H1, E2, L3, L4, O5, space 6, W7. So we want 7, starting at 7. Now, by doing this, we next want just to get to the R. So W, O, R. So, we know this is 7. So O is 8 and R is 9. So we want 7, 9. What this should come out with is war, how are you? And I'm going to prove that right now. Run. And I think I forgot the W. There we go. War, how are you? Perfect. Clear my output again. And now back over here. What though if we wanted just a start of the string? We wanted to basically just chop off the beginning and then we wanted the rest of the string. Well, would you have to know the length of the string? No. You could just put the first letter that you want. And then if you don't supply a second parameter, a second argument, then it's going to get the rest of the string. So this will now show up as world, how are you? Run. World, how are you? And that's because we only supplied the first index where we wanted to get started. We reset, clear our output, and go back to the script. Next up, I want to show you the reverse method. And the reverse method is literally as easy as it gets. You just call reverse on your string, or you can do string.reverse my string. But again, I prefer this method. And what this will do is literally just reverse the indexes of all of the characters. So instead of H being at 1, it will now be at whatever D is. And D will now be at 1. E will switch places with this L, and this L will switch places with R. This L will switch places with O. This O will switch places with W. And since the space is in the dead center, it won't move at all. So now if we run this, our output will say, Delro Oli, how are you? This is because we just reversed the string. We will now clear the output and reset our game and come back to here. My string reverse, how are you? Next up is, what if we wanted to repeat a string? What if we wanted to say the same string twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5,000 times? There's another method for this as well with strings, and that is rep, which means repeat. It's just shortened. Say we have my string rep, and we want to print that twice. This will now print hello world, how are you? We will now run this. Hello world, how are you? Now again, I want to note, Lua does not understand English. The reason that this does not have spaces or anything in between this D and this capital H is because Lua does not understand English. It is doing exactly what it is told because computers are dumb. They will only ever do exactly as they are told. Hello world, no space in between because Lua does not understand it needs to do that. Now, if we wanted it to, we could add a space, but then we have a space in between our comma and our string. We don't want that. We will keep it with hello world. But what if we wanted more than 2? What if we wanted 5,000? You can do that simply by changing the number as I just did. And now look at this. A bunch of hello worlds. And then finally at the end of this massively long number of hello worlds, we see, how are you? We're going to clear our output again because that's just messy. The next one that I want to show you guys is also the last one I'll be showing you, especially since this tutorial is getting close to a half-hour long. And this is the find. Now find actually doesn't return a string. Find actually returns a number. So let's say we wanted to find the first L in our sequence and find out what index this is at. Remember, we're concatenating this how are you, but this will no longer exactly work or look grammatically correct, but that's because what we will get back is a number. Now let's count to make sure that this works. 1, 2, 3. We should get 3 because we're looking for the first L. What this method does is it looks in the string, and when you put find, it will look for the first index where this string begins. It will also return the index at which the string ends, but typically that is not all that useful. It is typically more useful to get where the string begins. We will now run this, and we get 3. How are you? If we reset and then we decide, well, okay, I know where that L is, but I actually want to get this L. Well, you'd probably think I have to substring all the way to like this O so that I can find it. No, not really. If you want to find the first L in the word world, which, okay, there's only one, but hypothetically here, let's say you want that L. You only have to pass in one more parameter, comma, and then you can count your way up. So H, E, L, L, O, that's 5, 6, 7. Okay, we want to start our search after we've started the word world, and that starts at the 7th index. So we're going to put our string we want to find, and then we're going to put 7, because that's where we want to start our search. Now if we return to our base plate, clear our output, and then press run, we will see 10. How are you? Look at that. Last time we got 3, this time we got 10. This is correct because this L is at the 10th index. We're going to reset because I forgot to. Clear output. Now we have a working string that will find L in the word world because we've skipped over the first 2 L's. Hopefully this tutorial has been fun and engaging. I know it's been really, really long, but I promise we're getting out of the long, boring tutorials. But if you keep watching these tutorials, if you finish these tutorials and you get to the very end of these tutorials and you move on to the more fun stuff like creating GUI games and stuff, you will be happy because these tutorials are the things that are going to make you a master. And after just a few of these tutorials, you will be able to script anything and everything you could ever imagine, and any game that you ever wanted to make, you can make it in a snap. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. This has been part 3 of scripting in Roblox, Introduction to Scripting. This has been all about strings, and it's been long, just like some strings were, especially when you do my string, rep 5000. As we learned, was a massively long string. Now go out there, make some cool strings, and here's a great idea. In the comments below, I want you to type up a string in quotation marks, and I want you to do something to it from one of these functions we learned about today, and then I want you to concatenate it with something. And I want you to use these methods and come up with a creative way to post a like sarcastic, funny comment about what you thought about this video. If you do, I'm sure I'll like your comment. And if it's good enough, maybe I'll even feature it somehow in my next tutorial or one of the future tutorials. Again, thank you for watching. Please keep watching. I know this was probably boring, but it's going to get so much better and you're going to be so happy about it. Thank you. Have a great day. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. And please comment as I told you to below. I will catch you all later.